so long is like alchemy.
So many different scenarios, and yet still headed into the final night of NBA action in the regular season, we still don't have a clear picture of how these brackets are going to fill out. We've heard the conspiracy theory of Denver shifting all the powers into one bracket possibly, but this was the marquee matchup of the night, OKC and Houston. And as I broke this down, I have to admit how spoiled we are as Warrior fans, because like Houston in particular, like they're just not very fun to break down. There's not a whole lot to say about what they do. They just chuck threes. Early on, flat-footed, baited three, exactly what Houston wants from Russ. Now, Mike D'Antoni's been in the hospital with super bubble guts. Could you imagine D'Antoni with like a stomach bubble guts? Like, all right, I'm tripping. Bezdelic, remember the defensive specialist they brought out of retirement to fix the defense early in the season. Here we go early on, dribble, handoff, and I've been preaching this for years. You guys know, make Chris Paul finish at the rim. He no longer can do that in an efficient clip. And then you see Ferguson, you saw the game plan. You got to push it in transition, not let Houston set up their defense, and then the seal and finish from Adams. Paul George started on Harden, but you know how Houston does. They pick and screen until they get the matchup they want, and they continue to attack Grant, who I thought did more than an admirable job against Harden. You can't really look at the numbers. Because of his volume, he's going to score 30 every night. You have to look at the efficiency and the outcome of the game. You see Grant there getting them out in transition. As expected, the game had a playoff feel to it. And OKC was seemingly the hungrier team. They started out with more energy, but you know, again, how the Rockets play. It's just kind of like playing roulette. They're just going to launch threes until they get hot. And you saw OKC again attack with a quick outlet pass out in transition. And I liked how Russ started the game. If he can play like that, move downhill, we know he's a great rebounder, but do they have enough spot-up shooting? And are they going to get lulled into a three-point shootout with the Rockets? Would be a mistake. Grant knocks that one down. CP, these guys, again, it's just, I don't know what to give you commentary on, right? They just kind of dribble, shoot the three. Now, Mike D'Antoni will tell anybody who will listen how great of a post defender Harden is, and he is because he's so stout and strong, right? But I'll give him credit, man. Watching this game, I think his defensive effort is better than we've seen in the past. There's the split and the kick, and Eric Gordon had an off night but hit that one early on, and you can see OKC was kind of outplaying them, but because of the great equalizer in the three ball, Houston had the lead early in OKC. PG answers with the three of his own. Watch Ferguson turn this three ball down. He steps to the shot, right? That's an open look, and he is the best shooter of their others, right? Of their perimeter wings. He's going to have to rise in these moments as the moments get bigger and bigger as the playoffs start, right? Ferguson, I really think, is an X factor for them, and how he shoot, and is he willing to shoot in the big moments. More stout defense from Grant on Harden as they get out in transition. If you look at their roster, you can see why they're not very good in transition. Tucker's not someone who's going to run the floor well. Neither is CP3 at this point in his career. So their two best defenders would want the game played slow, right, at a slow pace. And that's why when you get out and run with Houston, it really is the best area to attack. And again, all over that left side, kind of stifling the beard, forces Nene into a late clock chuck. PJ hustles the ball down and decides to launch the three. 4 points in 30 minutes for Tucker. That's just not enough, even though they got some bench contribution. Then Russ staggered break, and that's when he's at his best, man, moving downhill, using the physicality, and I think he's learning to finish below the rim better now that he doesn't quite have that same elevation at this point in his career. And after so many opportunities, eventually you're going to get going, and so Harden eventually started to get going here late in the first, the and one after the slice to the rim. Now I'm going to freeze it here. This is how I would play this. I would send Schroeder over to Harden and have Grant step in front of the roller. But OKC, they have a lot of good individual defenders, but their team concepts, I think they were just too basic in guarding Houston's pick and roll early on in this, and it just generated a lot of open threes. Watch Noel shoot this shot here. This is not a shot for a 7-footer. Like, that's a weird shot. If anything, it's a backboard shot, but he's just, his IQ is too low, and then he switches on Harden, and you just knew what was going to happen here, right? And I admit, I've been intrigued with Noel. I thought the Warriors could maybe pick him up on the cheap as a center, a switchable center. His athleticism is so intriguing. His IQ is too low to trust him in any type of meaningful minutes. Harden, a bunch of free throws, and now he's warming up from three. The Rockets starting to kind of take control of things with their offense. Easy pick and roll action, and that's what Capella and CP expect. I just don't think their defensive action was dynamic enough. Morris, who they really expected more from in a midseason acquisition, kicks it to Fat Boy Felton in the corner for the three. So OKC did a good job of hanging around. The walk-up three from CP, the kick out, that's inexcusable not to get back. Again, exploiting their transition defense. Here's something that I don't think is talked about enough is, one, I think Capella vastly outplayed Adams. Watch him beat him down the floor here. And watching Adams last night, he's not the same player, man. I don't know if there's an injury he's hiding or what, but he's like lost a step and a half. Adams is not the same guy. He's not as physical. He's not as mobile. Daniel House Jr., that's what happens when you give everybody the ultra green light. He pulls the step back Harden three in the corner. Not exactly the shot you probably wanted. Russ continues to put the pressure on. But here's the thing with Houston, man. So Gordon off night, Tucker off night, Gerald Green couldn't miss, right? They find somebody who's hot from three and they feed him the ball. Now watch Adams on this screen action. He basically, when he comes out here, he just gets sucked out of the play, right? And the help has to come over and it's a wide open three. Adams, his lack of mobility in these pick and rolls is troubling if you're a Thunder fan. Scary moment here. Guys get undercut, fall on each other. And remember, it was Diallo, the other young player for OKC, who had that nasty dislocation against us earlier, I think in November. Tucker checking the knee. They cannot afford to lose him, but he's a tank. He's one of those guys, though, where it's like he gets chipped up and he starts to play even harder. He's just built like that. How fearless is Paul George, though? Look at him go up to try to cock this back with the injured shoulder. Maybe not the wisest decision, but it's well documented his shoulder injuries. He's not playing like it, right? He shows no fear. There's the push-off call, and it's going to be very interesting to see how they referee that come playoff time, because that space creator he uses is maybe his most valuable weapon. Never mind the step-back travel. There's the floater and the and one. As the Rockets kept them at arm's length for the entire first half. Second half, watch Russ knock Tucker over, and I'm here for all of this. I really like this play by Russ. So Tucker had been getting really physical. There had been some plays before, and Russ consciously did this. And you, especially against a guy like Tucker, you need to send him a message like, hey, I'm here for the physicality as well. You're not bullying me. Now, there was a discussion because it was a flagrant one. Would Russ be suspended for tonight's game against Milwaukee? That's not the case. The flagrants do not count same as technicals, as CP parts OKC's detached team defense. When Russ is kind of slowed down like that, that's when the three is going to be a little more efficient. It's when he's moving so fast, his elevation becomes sporadic on his jump shot. Again, Adams kind of useless in the pick and roll coverage. And then you see him, you know, Reggie Miller said it looked like Paul George could barely lift his right shoulder above his head. So, I mean, that's talk about toughness and fearlessness, because when you watch him play in the game, you don't really see any signs of it. He's not favoring it. There he is splashing down, maybe one of the smoothest jumpers we have in today's game. Now, I like Ferguson. I like Grant, but they're athletes. They're not really basketball players, and they're reactionary. They don't anticipate. Like, watch this pass here. This is a reactionary pass. He sees Russ. He's like, here, Russ, have the ball, right? And that's the difference between an athlete and a basketball player. And Sam Presti, for years and years, has been obsessed with athletes, long athletes, not necessarily ball players. But Ferguson has a shot at becoming a shooter, right? You see him knock the corner three ball down. That's going to be key. That's CP's favorite new shot now, is that step, hard step to the right and pull up. And then watch Harden step over here. We hadn't seen this in the past. So his team defense and his just overall effort defensively. Look, he ain't going to make no all-defensive team, right? But it's a lot better than it had been in the past. Now, the old Steven Adams would have just dangled his big Harrys all over CP's chin right there, right? But you see him kind of hesitate, and he's just, I think there's something wrong with him. I think he's so tough that we just don't really hear about it. There he is again, kind of a soft jump hook. But I don't think he's healthy. I think the question will be is, does Donovan trust Noel enough to play him more minutes and maybe keep Adams off the floor, because he is a shell of himself, Harden doing what he does. I think overall, I think OKC's greatest trait is kind of Russell's greatest trait. It's resiliency. It's unflackableness, right? No matter how they're playing or how much down they are, they just keep playing really hard because that's what Westbrook does. And I think that that is the danger of facing the Thunder, is they never think they're out of it, and they're going to continue to play hard. You're not going to break their spirit. Ferguson just too light in the britches to guard Harden. He doesn't extend the arm. So that shoulder bump, that spacer, he does it legally most of the time. Gerald Green, like I said, just went nuts. 5 threes off the bench in like 15 minutes. And what that does is it demoralizes you. When a guy comes in unaccounted for and gives you that type of buckets, right, it can demoralize you as a team because you're like, oh, man, that's not even the guy who's supposed to be scoring on us. Then Paul hits the emergency break, somehow regains his balance and knocks the 3 down. And when enough of them are hitting threes, we know they're capable of beating anybody. Starts the 4th, and Schroeder hits a huge shot, really, to give them some momentum. And he's struggled of late. He's been another reason why OKC has been in this downslide. There it is, the big step right. Not sure how you scout that. He's so smart. He doesn't really telegraph it, and he has a lot of counters. Paul George continuing to play tough and strong, taking the contact on the shoulders and finishing at the rim. He's very easy to root for, right? Because, he doesn't do a lot of whining. He just plays ball. Not a lot of complaining or whining. He just gives you effort. He's smooth. Aesthetically, his game is pretty. CP, the deep 3. And what do you know? 4th quarter, they'll never miss 27 threes in a row, right? But all of a sudden, is there going to be another drought for the Rockets? And Westbrook, again, when he's slowed down, he can kind of gauge the elevation on that shot, and it becomes a little more effective. House Jr., the roster may look a little different, but conceptually, this is the same team. It's that pass-happy football team that loves to throw the ball. They get big leads. They score a lot of points. But eventually, there's a ton of 3 and outs. All of a sudden, incomplete pass, 3 and out, and the other team inches their way back into the game. Out of a timeout, they finally get Adams something easy at the rim, right? And he's always going to rebound. He's always going to be a big body. It's just his mobility, I think, that's really telling. And then, is Houston chokers? Look at this. This is the same pick and roll they've been running all game. Capella bobbles the ball out of his hand. Like, at this point, there's something to be said about Houston late in games and in the playoffs and them not being able to perform down the stretch. Westbrook feet set, it's wet. But ultimately, do you really feel comfortable with Westbrook making decisions at the end of games? Because right there, that's a layup. Russ, he has to understand, Grant in the corner, that's not a high percentage shot. You don't have Klay Thompson waiting in the corner for you. Here's a little tip on Harden when he rolls. Stop right there. Look, he's into his layup. He's picked up his dribble there. He kind of telegraphs the lob a bit by picking the ball up very far from the basket. You're almost better suited to dare him to finish that long floater, right? But it's a pick your poison thing, and it's much easier said than done. And then again, this is OKC's strength. It's their mentality, right? They're fearless. They think they can beat anybody. They're not going to back down from anybody. And I think that's their greatest strength as a team. We've heard it all season, though. Can they make enough shots? And again, it's Grant in the quarter on the back pedal 3. Like, you got to be a real shooter to hit the back pedal 3. That's not in his bag at all. Westbrook, here we go. Under 3 minutes, 4-point game, and he decides to shoot another one. And it's just one of those shots you got to live with, right? And you can tell, hey, Donovan, how do you and your wife have such a happy marriage?
Billy Donovan and the Thunder have won 3 in a row.
All right, that was perverse. No, but that was basically, that mannerism with his tongue was kind of like, it's killing him to allow Westbrook the leash to just pull those at any time, right? But it's something you got to live with the way this team is constructed. Finally, they just switch the pick and roll, and Adams does well to contest Harden as the wells run dry. Oh, yeah, by the way, James Harden did not make a field goal in this 4th quarter. If you pay attention, towards the end of every regular season, we get a lot of these bad calls, a lot of players getting upset. And it's been a lot more pronounced this season, especially with the Warriors. But what the refs are doing is they're trying to call it tighter in order to prepare them for the playoffs in the way they're going to call it. But look at this. This is a foul on Schroeder. Like, I am fully prepared to empty a clip during these playoffs on some of these referee calls because I think that's just what we're going to have to do. Leaves his feet and then turns the ball over. And I also wonder, come playoff time, can Donovan and will Westbrook be willing to let Paul George initiate the offense down the stretch of games? Because I think he's the better decision maker. We know he's the better shooter, and I think he's going to generate better shots late in games. CP a bit off balance, and what do you know? They cannot throw it in the ocean, and then this happens. The same reason you let him shoot that last 3 is the same reason he hit that one, because he has the ultimate green light and confidence, hits a huge 3, and then slips, turns the corner, and gets the dunk. There's still time with 10 seconds, and they foul Harden. And I brought it up. I know I probably sound like a bit of a hater, but I'm not going to hide it. I think it's a legit question. Is James Harden and the Houston Rockets chokers? Are they chokers? Because until they prove us otherwise, It's just not a crazy statement. Here they go. Westbrook pushing. They trap it. He gets it back. He's going to move downhill. And what are you going to do? PG, game time in the corner. Got it. Just 4 of 14 on the night from behind the arc, but hits the biggest shot of the night. And the Thunder, 1.8 seconds away from avoiding the champs in the first round. Or I don't even know. The scenarios are so crazy. But here we go. Inbound play. Watch Harden. Complete shove off to clear space. Gets a clean look. And Mr. clanks the open 3-ball. And the Thunder somehow get this win. Now, after all this, we still don't know what the playoff picture is. There's still one more night of basketball. The Warriors play Memphis. I am well aware, yes, Steph Curry tweaked the ankle, I should say, last night. Go ahead and look it up. Obviously, I didn't cover that game. Now, I think initially I was going to cover one of these games on the final regular season nights. But I think unless there's a really crazy fun game, what I'm going to have for you is a pod with James, just talking about the last week of season and Warriors and stuff, and then go right into a breakdown, because by the end of tonight, we'll know who our first round opponent is, whether it's the Clippers or whoever it is. And I'm going to go right into working on a breakdown for you guys before the playoffs start Saturday, if y'all good with that. I'm out, Joe. So long as like alchemy.